Thank you. No, without any pause, it's time to welcome Nevena Ivanova, coming from the Bulgarian Academy of Sciences. She is professor, assistant professor in philosophy of technology, and she work on media philosophy mainly, and publish also many papers on the artistic and conceptual experimentation of AI. So it's this reflection she's gonna present now. The title of communication is How Does AI Rewrite Concepts such as Creativity and Authorship? The floor is to you.
Thank you very much.
Nevena.
May I
Share your screen? Yes, no problem.
Thank you. You have to allow me.
It's fine. It's done.
Okay. Yes. Let me just. Thank you very much for inviting me for this talk. I'm really thrilled to be part of this wonderful conference. My talk, as was mentioned, will be in creativity, on the concept of creativity in the context of creative machines. So I will try to skip some of the obvious points because I don't have time really to develop this topic, but basically computational creativity is a discipline which has been developed in recent years intensively in the context of artificial intelligence research. And computer scientists understand computational creativity as designing machines which are capable of producing and evaluating independently, autonomously, output which is deemed as creative by humans. And a lot of humanist researchers have pointed to the reductive and contradictory conceptions of creativity behind this kind of technical understanding. The technical understanding of creativity is based on Margaret Bolden's definition of creativity as it should be novel, surprising, and have a value. And she has also classified three types of creativity: exploratory, combinational, or combinatorial, and transformative, but I'm not going into detail of those. I will point out just a very short type of, I will just reduce this for you to see, short, very short from the human perspective, very short contradictions in the concept of creativity. First, what we see, what we think is creative in from human perspective, is really the expression of the most deepest embodied nature of being a human, and we think it strikes directly into our heart when we give up the last resort, the last fortress to the automation after giving almost all our abilities, which we thought of being exceptionally, uniquely human, like intelligence, like reasoning, like pattern recognition. And finally, we still think that creative imagination is something which expresses more than just rational abilities. It's something which cannot be rationalized. It doesn't follow any rules. It's according to the Kant's understanding and theory of the genius, something which goes against the rule, which expresses the embodied humanity and ability to be emotional and emotive. But I will skip this kind of understanding, which is more like obvious, and go directly to, yeah, but how can I return to? And think of, there is another problem with this kind of idea of imitation game. And this is that we also don't think of creativity as something which is judged by external entity. Usually when we think of truly creative act, it's usually self-expressive, and it's kind of the goal is self-adjusted. It's not poised to please somebody else, some other aesthetic entity. But I will return to this in the next slide. I'm not explaining what is this because I guess you know this is the next Rembrandt painting, which is in the style of Rembrandt, but it's created by AI. And for me, it's a typical example of this kind of imitation game in the term of Turing type of simulating creativity, but not really being creative. But from another point of view, if we take it a little bit one layer deeper and ask what kind of automation of creativity do we mean from the perspective of the machine, the first thing which comes to mind is mechanizing creativity according to rules and programming creativity. Uh, but we think more in terms of mechanical machines, the machines which have been valid throughout, like defined by Descartes, and the way industrial machines work or clocks work, which is fully determined by the way they are designed by the engineers, fully controllable because they're following the rule, and the moment they accidentally deviate from the rule, usually it means they break. But computational machines, computational systems are actually different type of machines. They're cybernetic systems which work on totally different type of principle, which is accommodating feedback and self-regulation into the system. And when we speak of and think of such machines, they are more and more lifelike. They are more and more behaving as living being, and this is very well developed by a philosopher called Yu Hui, who uh, in 2019 published a book called Recursivity and Contingency, and he follows how cybernetic type of machines are basically more like behaving like organisms. And of course, this is something uh, since the cybernetics, this kind of bridging of the gap. But what exactly does it mean in terms of creativity? Recursivity, true artistic creativity is not about creating a beautiful painting or beautiful musical piece, actually. It's about putting a mirror in front of ourselves, in front of the way we see the world, or the way we listen to sounds, or the way we think about ourselves and tell stories about ourselves, and reimagine, make us reimagine every new style in art, every truly creative masterpiece is something which asks us to reimagine how we perceive the world, how we are being in the world, how we imagine ourselves in the world. It makes us rethink our de-automate the way we habitually have automated our perception. And this, if we think how this would work for automating creativity, we would imagine a type of creative behavior which should set the goal for itself and being able to somehow readjust its behavior self-reflexively, because the main thing about artistic creativity is some kind of reflexivity which it turns upon ourselves, and the way we reimagine our own the way our perception works. So this is the same which we should think of when we think of automation, automatic creativity. It should reimagine its own behavior, its own thinking, its own operation. And truly, in the state of the art machine learning algorithms or deep learning algorithms, the reason why we so much started talking about artificial intelligence in the last 5 or 10 years is because machine learning algorithms are working to a bigger extent self-reflexively. They're capable of almost recoding and reprogramming the way they judge the database, the way they make the connections or measurements or the parameters. And the more they're independent from the human input and the restrictions which are put by the human, the more they become self-creative. And of course, we can imagine true creativity in the automation only if we imagine that the goal also are self-defined, because what we could say defines true artistic creativity, and that's why usually when we say creativity, we associate it with art and not really with science and technology, which is a matter of a different discussion. But there is some reason in it, and this is because if we think of engineering innovation or most of the science discovery, let's say not the fundamental science, it's usually directed to certain goal of being useful, of being utilitarianly applied. So the goal is set somehow in a short term, in a visible and recognizable terms. So let's say discovering the cure for cancer or the best device for connecting people. And this kind of restriction is not present in art. So what we have in artistic creativity is that the goal itself is open, it's dynamic, and it's self-positing together with the process of creation. And here I give an example of our artwork by Albana Baeva. She used the guns, DC guns, um, which are, she gave them various database, human and animals and other types of database, and asked symbolically the machine learning algorithms to identify some body for itself, to define themselves as body creatures. And what we see here for me is symbolic because it shows that the first of all, it doesn't separate between any kind of bodies. It includes everything into its dynamic self-definition. And in the next slide, it becomes more obvious why I think this is more about the idea of what automative, like computational creativity should be about. And the last point is, in this context, is that if we really should think of truly automating like computational or algorithmic creativity, we should think of type of creativity which is not for our aesthetic appreciation, and probably not even accessible to us to appreciate it. If we follow the human understanding of creativity, it should be more like self-expression, which works for connecting with other AI agencies and really speaking to their own nature, and not really to us as external agencies. But saying all this, we should think beyond this really kind of self contradictory opposition between human and the machine, and really thinking that machines and humans have never been separated. What defines humans throughout the history, and Stigler has a very good development of this kind through his philosophy, but he's not the only one. Humanity has defined itself through its own technology, not only in terms of how it sees itself, but also the way it develops its organs, its perceptions, the way it's externalized its perceptions or extends its organs. It's always through technology. We are capable of seeing into the molecular world because of our technologies and microscopes. We are capable of seeing into the cosmic world because of our telescopes. Quantum apparatuses, all kinds of apparatuses are allowing us to manipulate matter on a different level or see chemical um, behavior on different levels. So all this expands our perceptions and expands our own identities and who we are and our organs, not to mention that we externalize our memories, our cognitive abilities into our technology. And by this, we are becoming what we are. We are developing our own consciousness, our own spiritual development. So not it goes without saying that evolution of technology itself is going through humans. So thinking separately and in opposition, like human technology, is not really the best way to think about it. So let's say if we pose the question of creativity in a more universal terms as something which is regardless of the agency, is what brings novelty into the world, the force which brings novelty into the world. How can we pose the question of computational creativity not in terms of artistic imitation of this or that, and artists are putting new products into the world which we deem aesthetic, but uh, what is really the novelty which creativity, which computation has brought into the world in unprecedented way, in radical ways. And in this sense, again, it's recognized by many researchers, including Benjamin Bratton, who talks about this a lot. It's a planetary scale level of awareness. And by this, I mean, we have all kinds of varieties of sensors which are everywhere in the world, like ubiquitous in terms of you have sensors in the soil who measure all kinds of chemicals or pollutions in the air, in the cosmos, in the sky. You have all kinds of machine temperature measuring devices which measure human expressions, gestures, everything, living or non-living, chemical or molecular level, cosmic level, is uploaded into certain network, which is the internet, and it's first of all captured by automatic devices and sensors. It's exchanged as information, it's analyzed by automatic algorithms, it's exchanged as information, as measurement by these automatic devices. And this is a layer and level of processing information which have never been existed before, and this expands human ability to perceive on a totally different level, which is not the global scale we have used to think as globalism, because globalism is really human anthropocentric and colonizing concept. By on a planetary scale, it's more like thinking of the planet as being aware of itself through these devices, through computation, which is interconnected, its logic is systematizing and totalizing. So here comes the idea of creativity. It's not automatically a creative behavior the way we understand it, because if we think of how Derrida interprets Kantian analysis of the genius, true creativity is something which brings the most impossible. It's something which brings the most improbable into the world. It's not something, while computation is so far trained to bring the most probable into the world, and everything which is generated by computational agencies, regardless of how creative they are, how state-of-the-art machine learning they are, is based on past data, which is digested, and the most probable output very often is released into the world. And this is a very tunneling vision of the future we have now, which is usually restricting really true imagination and radical imagination of possible futures, and restricting us to think of this capitalist, profitable, catastrophic really future of non-future actually, which is closing upon us. And the real creativity is supposed to summon us to really use this kind of perceptual opening which computation is giving us, and raise our own perceptions, evolve a new type of creativity which is de-individuated, non-anthropocentric, and really think of novel ways of reimagining ourselves through as a nervous system of the planetary level, let's say. So I will finish here and leave open to discussions, hopefully. And I thank you very much for your attention. And if you want to connect with me anytime, this is my email. I will be really glad for further discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. You made the bridge between the anthropocenic concern and the AI question. Thank you so much for this brilliant idea of planet speaking by itself. It's fascinating. Let's have a few minutes of question and answer, maybe. You can ask the floor for question using the reaction icon on the right. What fascinates me is the fact that we usually see AI as an adversary to the Anthropocene, as it's consuming huge resources. There was recently a book on this topic. But according to your presentation, as a way of enable us to extend our sensibility to other kind of agencies, it could open us to many kind of creation of this vibrating planet, speaking through these captors and all this this information on the internet.
Yes, if I may answer, yes, I didn't mention, of course, that it's consuming maybe more energy than airplanes, and it's really extremely hungry for electricity, for all kinds of geological elements which are rare which destroy the earth. Uh, and that's exactly this kind of contradictory thing, because all of our new technology is doing that, and the more it's developed, it's not just immaterial, it's something which is really very, very material. And that's why Benjamin Bratton develops this idea that it's a earth producing its own awareness, because it involves a lot of geological elements, and it's not just we creating our technology and we being the only agency. So it's not uncontroversial. As I said, it's really a force which so far is questionable whether it doesn't foreclose our creativity, because I try to focus only on the question of creativity. It at the moment, the way, if we leave it automatically behaving the way its own logic is, it's rather closing our creativity, our ability to imagine anything different in the future. And as always, it has gone with creativity in reimagining ourselves. If we think of creativity not as a specific products, but as the ability to reimagine ourselves, to reimagine who we are, uh, it challenges us to raise up and really try to think beyond this systematic totalizing logic, which is giving us, it gives us a lot of opportunities for breaking through, but it also might really automatize us. So I think this is where true creativity comes. We need to reimagine new futures and new ways of working with this technology, which is not really the most. It's not how we do it now. It's not the most obvious now. But being in opposition, I don't think it's the right. It's not the solution. Seeing it as a kind of enemy. Or
Thank you. I like this idea. There's a question in the chat from Nicoletta asking for some concrete examples of nature and AI co-created works.
Well, there are a lot of different examples in terms of how artists are working with AI, and I think there have been given here as well. Some of them are taking it as collaborators and producing a specific type of outputs. Others are trying to express the logic of computation, the logic of algorithmic logic into the work. So trying to give voice to the let's say machine learning algorithms, like the art I offered. And the most probably interesting, maybe this is the question about, is this, which I didn't, I probably mentioned, like Trevor Paglen and other artists who are trying to imagine really on a planetary scale, what does it mean, this ubiquitous machine vision? How does it work? How do machine truly see? And this is what some artists are trying to imagine. How does this machine vision work from different perspectives? What is its materiality? For example, Trevor Paglen also is taking photos of the cables under the sea, of all these data centers around the world, how this machine vision is centralized into certain institutions, and how these infrastructures works. So it's not artistic output as we imagine it, as I said, a beautiful stories about artificial intelligence. It's about really seeing us as humans, realizing the scale of this computation, and starting thinking how can we reimagine and step outside of this systematizing, totalizing, materially closing surveillance machine vision. So there is no, if the question is about an example of such opening of the vision, there is no yet. I wouldn't say we have reached to the point where we can really imagine. No, so there are some speculations. No, I wouldn't say there is any collaboration between artificial intelligence and artists which come to mind, which open this vision I'm talking about. It's more about they are pointing to the what exists at the moment, and what they ask us to start thinking and realizing what's going on, like provoking us to raise above and think. And
Marida gave us an example.
okay, yeah.
Could you comment?
Yes, yeah, okay.
Yeah, actually, it was a question I wanted to to ask you, because it's quite a good example of the organic life, biological and artificial algorithms, artificial intelligence, but also in a very interest way, because well, I can show a few slides if you are interested, maybe, or I don't know if you don't have the time.
I haven't seen his work per se, but yes, you're totally right. Yes, he's a very good example of breaking this anthropocentric and technocentric understanding, and diversifying the vision in a very interactive. Yeah, you're right. It's a very good example. I agree.
And a kind of extreme one, because what he has done in his work is ask one person to visualize a few objects, and then through the collaboration with his Japanese lab, they just translate the IRM waves in computer signals. So the exhibit actually shows videos, films, which show the work of the algorithms crawling through all the database. And at the end, we have something that might or might not be the object that he has been taught. So the artist, at the end of the day, might be able just to think about his work. And so no need to visualize, no need to support. And this is another application of intelligence, of AI, that is not very, very often shown and assessed, which is, deep neurons networks. So it's just image recognition, and the idea that even the artifacts won't be necessary anymore, and that everything could just be through brain waves is kind of a vertigo.
Yes, and mentioning use work, I haven't really seen it, unfortunately. I mean, that's this kind of works needs to be experienced, as most of the artworks. But The other thing is that we shouldn't exclude non-human living beings from this reimagining of technology. It's a very important understanding that it's not just human and technology anymore. We should include all non-human living being into this reimagining of technology and into this reimagining the planet, reimagining ourselves. And yeah, there are some artists who are doing this. I don't know this one. Terre Second.
Oui, Chatonsky, Gregory Chatonsky is quite well known in Canada and France.
I don't think I have heard of him. Thank you very much for your input.
Thank you. It was very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank to both of you.